As you know, we love a stat here at GCN. So as it's July and Tour de France time, we've rustled up a whole host of fascinating Tour de France stats for you to absorb and enjoy.
Yeah, in the form of a Tour de France stat attack. In terms of stage victories, it is the great Eddy Merckx who leads the way with a staggering 34 to his name, which of course helped him on his way to 5 overall victories at the race. However, the Briton Mark Cavendish is well on his way to that mark. He now sits on 30 stage victories throughout his career. Can he beat the record of Merckx? Well, given that he's only 32 years of age at the moment, you wouldn't put it past him rewriting the record books over the next few years.
It is worth mentioning though, Dan, that Cav actually has the record for the amount of road wins because Eddy's tally includes TT victories.
Okay.
Now the record number of wins in the green jersey points competition goes to German rider Erik Zabel, who achieved 6 wins back-to-back between 1996 and 2001, overtaking the previous record held by Sean Kelly of Ireland with 4.
That's right. However, there is a rider in the current pro peloton who does stand a very good chance of equalling and perhaps bettering that record, because Peter Sagan has won the green points jersey in every Tour de France in which he has started, which is the last 5, starting all the way back in 2012. The mountains competition has been around as an official Tour de France classification since 1937 as an incentive to the best climbers in the race. Now the record holder in this classification is the slightly controversial housewives favourite of France, Richard Virenque. Now he did admit to using performance enhancing drugs through his career, but nevertheless he took the win in that competition on no less than 7 occasions.
Beating by 1 both Federico Bahamontes of Spain and Lucien Balimpa of Belgium, who both had 6 wins apiece. And in fact, none of the current generation of pros are anywhere near that tally. And in fact, it's only Rafa Majka in 2014 and 2016 who's won it twice out of the recent crop of pros. Now the rider who spent the most days in the maillot jaune, the yellow jersey, is, kind of unsurprisingly, the legend that is Eddy Merckx. His total? 96 days in yellow.
That is really quite incredible. Over 3 months consecutively. Right, well, if you want another record, the record for the most different wearers of the yellow jersey within a single Tour de France is 8, but it happened on 2 occasions, on both 1958 and 1987. But we should also give a shout out to one Fabian Cancellara. He wore the yellow jersey on 29 days, and that is a record for someone that never actually ever won the Tour de France. According to the record books, the record for the most number of overall victories at the Tour de France stands at 5, and it's held by 4 individual riders, they being Jacques Anquetil, Eddy Merckx, Bernard Hinault, and also Miguel Indurain.
Indeed, but Lance Armstrong won an incredible 7 Tours de France successively, although, justifiably so, his name's been scrubbed from the record books by the organisers. But the same can't be said for Richard Virenque and Erik Zabel, who latterly admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs. Now the record for the most number of starts or participations in the Tour de France is actually shared by 3 riders, George Hincapie, Jens Voigt and Stuart O'Grady, all with 17 starts apiece.
Yeah, and 2 of those I think held the yellow jersey at a point in their career as well. And the mark at which they overtook was that of Joop Zoetemelk. He started 16 Tours de France and he finished all of them, giving him a 100% record through his career. And incredibly, he finished in the top 10 on 12 of those occasions.
And he won in 1980.
Wow.
Go you.
The record for the most elderly rider ever to take part in La Grande Boucle goes to Henri Paré. He was 50 years old when he took part in the race back in 1904, 113 years ago.
Wow. Well, the accolade for the oldest rider ever to win the Tour de France, well, you have to go all the way back to 1922, and Firmin Lambot, who won the Tour aged 36 years and 4 months. Yeah, sorry about that, it's just started to rain out there. Now, the fastest ever road stage in the Tour de France, well, that was held in 1999 from Laval to Blois over a distance of 190.4 kilometres. On that particular occasion, the stage was won by none other, you're right, than Mario Cipollini. His average speed down, 50.4 kilometres an hour.
Well, that is fast, but the individual time trial record is even faster, and it's held for a long time by the American Greg LeMond. He won the final stage of the 1989 Tour de France, 24.5 kilometre individual time trial, with an incredible average speed of 54.545 kilometres per hour. That was enough to give him the overall victory that year by a slender 8 seconds over Laurent Fignon. However, that mark has been eclipsed recently by the Australian Rohan Dennis. Back in 2015, he won the opening individual time trial of the race, a 14.5 kilometre time trial, with an average speed of 55.466 kilometres per hour.
Like, you can't take that. That is rapid.
Yeah.
But the undisputed heavyweight of high speeds in the Tour de France is this. Back in 2013, it was a team time trial in Nice, won by Orica Greenedge. Their speed, 57.8 kilometres an hour. I mean, it's hard enough just to get up to that speed, let alone hold it.
Yeah.
I need a piece of ham.
Now, the country with the most overall wins to their name, as you can probably guess, is France. As of 2017, they have 36 overall wins at the Tour de France, which is exactly double that of the second place country, which is Belgium, who stand at 18.
But currently, Dan, I mean, both of those countries have experienced a remarkably long drought between the last Tour de France victories. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 1985 to see the last Frenchman that stood atop the podium. And on that particular occasion, it was none other than Bernard Hinault. And then for the Belgians, well, you have to go even further back to 1976, when Lucien Van Impe stood atop the podium, adorned in yellow. Now, arguably, the early editions of the Tour de France were far tougher than the tours of today. And to justify that, I've got a stat for you, okay? In the 1919 edition of the Tour, there were 67 starters, but get this, only 10 riders actually finished that edition of the Tour, only 14.9% in fact.
Yeah, in contrast to that, the record came in 2016, where 174 finishers came from the initial 198 starters. That is a percentage of 87.8%.
Well, there you go. Well, hope you've enjoyed these Tour de France stats. And for some more Tour de France content and general cycling-related content, how about clicking on the globe to subscribe to GCN? It's absolutely free.
Yeah. Now, a couple more videos which you might like to watch right now. Down here are the top 10 rules of the Tour de France, and down here, Matt and I have a Tour de France fact off.